I always thought I'd retire quietly in the house my father built, a sturdy split-level brick home tucked along a sleepy cul-de-sac, where folks waved from porches and arguments rarely got louder than a mower that ran too early. But peace doesn't last long when someone like Karen moves in next door. I'd seen her type before, clipboard in hand. HOA rules memorized down to footnote, always ready with a passive-aggressive smile and a pamphlet about community standards. What I didn't expect was to be accused of trespassing on land I own. The twist? A recent survey shows her house, the whole thing, is actually 10 feet over property line. Onto my land. Let that sink in. It started with a knock. Sharp, repetitive. Annoyed, Karen stood there, fingers still in midair like she owned the air itself. "You've been walking too close to my azaleas," she said, frowning at the ground like it had personally offended her. I blinked. "Your azaleas are on my driveway." That was her first warning, and it wasn't the last. She even filed a complaint with the HOA, claiming I was lurking around her window, which was rich, considering it looked out over my garden. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, because I'm real curious if this kind of mess happens anywhere else, or if I just won the Nightmare Neighbor lottery. I tried to ignore her, truly, but the line was drawn literally in the dirt, and the moment I pulled out the land survey papers, everything changed. Karen wasn't just rude. She was living in a house that was never supposed to be hers, at least not where it stood. The survey wasn't something I pulled out of nowhere. I'd hired a crew after noticing my fence line didn't quite match up with the original plat. It wasn't some petty dispute. I was planning to expand my garden beds, maybe pour a small shed foundation near the back. But when the surveyors showed up, they started scratching their heads, walking back and forth, mumbling to each other with growing concern. One of them finally looked up and said, "Sir, this isn't just a fence issue. Her house. It's built into your lot." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. Turns out, Karen's home, the whole structure, was over the legal boundary, 10 feet, 3 inches into my land, according to the markers. Her garage, her flower beds, even the walkway she used to tell me was unsightly from her side, all of it was sitting square on what the county confirmed was mine. I didn't say a word at first. I waited, let her stew in her own smugness. But the next morning, I caught her walking her tiny yappy dog across my lawn, plastic bag in one hand, leash in the other. "Just so you know," she said without breaking stride, "you'll be receiving a fine from the HOA. Trespassing's no small matter." I stared at her, at the little dog squatting on my side yard, at her garage, on my property, and something inside me snapped. "You're real confident for someone whose house is sitting on stolen ground," I muttered. She turned around, confused. I held up the survey folder. She didn't even blink. "Fake," she said. "Those papers don't mean a thing. My builder was certified. And frankly, I think you're just bitter." I hadn't even started yet. I didn't wait long. That same afternoon, I walked right up to Karen's porch, her precious porch, and knocked. Hard. She opened the door, that same look on her face like she smelled something bad. I held the survey folder in front of her, tapped the highlighted section with my index finger. "This is from a licensed team. County approved. Your house is 10 feet onto my property." She let out a small laugh. Not the funny kind. The dismissive, fake kind people use when they think you're beneath them. "You must be mistaken. That's impossible." I didn't flinch. "It's not just possible, it's measurable. That's your garage, that's my boundary. You've been trespassing for years, Karen, and now you're threatening me with fines." Her smile dropped an inch, just enough to let the real Karen peek through. "Well," she said, arms folding tight, "even if that were true, you didn't seem to care until now. And besides, it's been like this since before I moved in. If you got a problem, take it up with the developer. The developer went bankrupt 8 years ago." She shrugged. "Not my issue. You want to sue a ghost, be my guest." I stared at her, trying to decide if she was bluffing or truly didn't understand the mess she was in. But deep down, I think she knew her little empire of azaleas and snide remarks was built on a lie. Literally. As I turned to leave, she called after me, "And if you come onto my walkway again, I'll report you. One more time, and the HOA board will step in." That was the moment I stopped treating this like a neighborly misunderstanding, because now it was war. By the end of the week, the HOA had slapped a formal letter on my door. Ongoing trespassing violations. No hearing, no warning, just a printed piece of paper taped next to my mailbox like I was some kind of criminal. I sat on my front porch, letter in one hand, coffee in the other, watching Karen sweep her steps like nothing was wrong. She caught my eye and smiled like she'd won something, like this was a game. I took the letter to the HOA office myself, walked in, laid it on the front desk, and calmly explained the situation, showed them the survey, gave them copies, pointed out the legal boundaries. The woman behind the desk barely looked up. "Property disputes are civil matters," she said flatly, "not something the board gets involved in." "So why'd I get this?" I asked, tapping the violation notice. She glanced over at it, then at me. "A resident submitted evidence. We followed protocol." "Karen, I'm not allowed to say, but we both knew that weekend I installed stakes, bright orange ones. I marked every inch of the property line, from the side yard all the way back to the rear fence." Karen came out onto her porch, hands on hips, as if I was the one making things worse. "What do you think you're doing? Marking what's mine. It looks tacky. Then move your house." She didn't reply. That night, I noticed 2 of the stakes were gone, just pulled right out of the ground and tossed aside. I replaced them. The next morning, another one disappeared. It wasn't just about land anymore. It was about control, about someone who thought she could bend the rules to fit her will. But I wasn't going to break. The stakes kept disappearing, one by one, like someone was testing my patience, seeing how far they could push before I snapped. But I'm not the snap type. I'm the dig deep, keep going type. And I had a feeling Karen was underestimating just how far I'd go to prove the truth. So I did something she never saw coming. I pulled the original blueprints from county records. My father had kept a copy too, neatly rolled and tucked inside a weathered storage tube in the attic. I compared them line by line, and that's when I saw it, clear as day. Her foundation crossed the property line by more than 10 feet. But it wasn't just her builder's mistake. It had been flagged, stamped, denied. The plans for her home, or at least the original version, had already been reviewed years ago. The building inspector had marked them as non-compliant. Not once, not twice, but 3 separate times, all related to property lines. Someone had overridden the denial. It didn't take long to figure out who. A signature, half legible, next to the last approval line. M. Hillman, the same name that popped up on the HOA president list from 5 years ago. Karen's cousin. I remember the name from a block party once. She bragged about having family in high places. Now it made sense. Karen's entire house was built on a favor, a shady signature that bypassed every rule in the book. And now she was using the same board, the same broken system, to throw dirt in my face and act like I was a problem. I sat at my dining table that night, documents spread out in front of me, the edges curling from old staples and dust. It wasn't just personal now. It was proof. I didn't go public right away. I could have marched those blueprints to the HOA office, waved them around like a flag, called a meeting, and exposed the whole thing. But I needed to be smart. Karen had allies, folks who owed her favors, or just like the sound of her voice at potlucks. You'd be surprised how far a fruit tray and a fake smile can get you in neighborhoods like mine. Instead, I started talking to the people who mattered, the ones who'd seen her antics, even if they never said out loud. Old Mr. Harrell across the street, whose mailbox she reported for being 2 inches too high. The Rodriguez's next door, who got a letter about their holiday lights being distracting. Bit by bit, people started opening up. Turns out, I wasn't the only one she'd rubbed the wrong way. Still, it wasn't easy. I could feel the tension in the air. Fewer waves at the mailbox. Shorter conversations. Some neighbors just didn't want to get involved. Can't blame them, really. No one wants to pick sides, not when the HOA is involved. Too many rules, Too much gossip. Too many Karens out there waiting to make your life miserable if you dare speak up. One evening, I came home to find a note taped to my garage. Drop it. You're making things worse for everyone. No name, just blocky handwriting and cheap tape. My first thought? Karen. But I couldn't prove it. That night, I sat on my back porch, listening to the wind rustle through the oak trees and wondering how a peaceful street like ours turned into a battlefield. This wasn't just about land anymore. It was about respect, about who gets to push and who's expected to fold. And I was done folding. The next morning, I drove straight to a property attorney's office 2 towns over. Someone not tangled up in HOA politics. Her name was Erica Caldwell. Sharp eyes, quiet voice, the kind of person who didn't waste time on pleasantries. I laid out the survey, the blueprints, the correspondence, every missing stake, every HOA warning letter. She didn't blink once. "You've got a case," she said, flipping through the folder. "A big one." She explained it plain. Karen's house was encroaching. The structure crossed a boundary. That meant I had every legal right to demand a remedy, removal, compensation, or easement negotiation. But here's the kicker. Karen would be responsible for the cost, not the HOA. And once a formal letter was served, the clock would start ticking. Fast. That evening, I typed out a timeline of events and printed copies of every document, survey, photos, county records, even the rejected blueprints. Then I dropped them into manila envelopes and slid them under the doors of a few trusted neighbors. No gossip, no anger, just the truth. By the end of the week, I filed the encroachment claim through Erica. Karen would be served. Officially, no more sarcastic waves from the porch. No more fake HOA threats. This was court now. Real consequences. I knew it wouldn't end quietly. People like Karen don't just roll over when the mirror shows them who they really are. But I wasn't scared anymore. I had the facts, the law, and something she'd never understand, patience. As I pulled the blinds shut that night, I caught her peeking through hers. We locked eyes for a second. Her curtain twitched closed. Game on. The notice was served on a Wednesday morning. A process server, polite, serious, handed it to Karen while she was pruning her roses. She didn't even look at the envelope before tossing it onto a patio chair like it was junk mail. But later that evening, her porch light stayed off. No sweeping. No smug strolls to the mailbox. Just darkness and a tight-closed front door. By Friday, I got the knock. Karen stood there, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. No preamble, no fake charm. "This is ridiculous," she said. "No. What's ridiculous is your house sitting on my land for 7 years. She stepped closer, voice low, like she was trying not to be overheard. "You're really going to go through with this? Tie the whole neighborhood up in legal nonsense?" I didn't answer, just held her gaze. I have friends on the board, people who can make things difficult. There it was, the real Karen. "You already have," I said, "but that ends now." She scoffed. "You think a judge is going to make me tear down my house over a few feet of dirt?" I stepped out onto the porch, standing between her and the front yard that, let's be honest, wasn't just hers anymore. It's not about dirt. It's about lying, threatening, and pretending like the rules don't apply to you. They do, and now they're catching up. She looked away for a second, not down, not apologetic, just stalling. Then she turned back. "You're going to regret this," she whispered and walked off. But here's the thing, I didn't. Because sometimes the only way to end a war is to stop playing by the bully's rules and start using your own. The court date was set, and I was ready. The hearing wasn't dramatic. No outbursts, no gas from the gallery. Just a quiet municipal courtroom, a sleepy judge and 2 folders, mine, thick and color-coded, and Karen's, thinner than her patience. My attorney laid it all out. The surveys, the blueprints, the stamped denials, the photos of disappearing stakes, and the warnings I'd received from the HOA, each one more baseless than the last. Karen tried to argue it wasn't her fault. Blamed the builder. Blamed the HOA. Blamed old records and changing zoning lines. But her voice cracked halfway through. Like even she didn't believe the story she was selling anymore. The judge didn't need long. Her house was encroaching. Plain and simple. The court ordered an immediate resolution. She had 60 days to reach a settlement with me. Either purchase the land her house sat on, at market value plus damages, or pay to have the structure partially removed. The judge also left the door open for me to pursue further damages if I could prove malicious interference from the HOA. As we left the courtroom, Karen didn't look at me, just marched straight to her car, sunglasses on, keys clutched like she was strangling a snake. Word spread fast. I didn't have to say a thing. Neighbors who once kept their heads down started nodding at me again. A few even apologized. One lady brought over banana bread, said she was sorry for not believing me sooner. I appreciated it, but what meant more was the space, the quiet. No more notes, no more accusations. Just the sound of wind through the trees and the feeling of knowing that my land, every inch of it, was finally mine again. It cost me time, stress, peace, but it was worth it, every second of it. A few weeks after the ruling, I stood on the edge of my yard, watching a construction crew roll up to Karen's house. She'd taken the buyout option, paid for the slice of land her garage sat on. Quietly, no fanfare, no porch chatter with the neighbors, just a wire transfer, a property line adjustment, and a whole lot of silence. She'd stopped waving, stopped scowling too. It was like she'd vanished in place. Her presence reduced to closed blinds and the occasional rustle of her sprinklers at 6 a.m. The HOA never apologized, but they stopped sending letters, stopped patrolling my hedges, or nitpicking where I parked my truck. I never got the formal acknowledgement I wanted, but honestly, I didn't need it. The truth won. Not loud, not flashy, just steady, like justice should be. I planted a new row of evergreens along the edge of my land that spring, right along the updated line. Not out of spite, but out of peace. I wanted something living there, something mine. Every time I looked at those saplings, I didn't see the mess we'd been through. I saw the boundary that finally held. Neighbors started lingering again. Conversations came back. Not about Karen, not even about the case. Just little things. The weather, the dog that keeps escaping 2 doors down, the way the sun hits the oaks just right before it sets. And me? I sleep better now, with the window cracked, with the world quiet. Funny how something as simple as 10 feet of dirt can turn into a war. And funnier still, how standing your ground, quite literally, can remind you of who you are. I'm not the guy who picks fights, but I'll finish one, especially when someone tries to erase the line between what's mine and what's hers.